City upon a hill. That has been a favorite expression, as far as I know, a city upon a hill, for every president since Ronald Reagan. A city upon a hill. George W. Bush said it was calling from beyond the stars to stand for freedom. A city upon a hill. A great calling for all Americans. A city upon a hill entered the American lexicon before there was a United States of America. It's a biblical quote from the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, and it came to be part of the American lexicon before the United States of America because of John Winthrop, who used it as the foundation for a sermon that he preached either in Southampton before crossing the ocean or on the ship while crossing the Atlantic Ocean in 1630. Winthrop lays out a model for Christian charity that ought to, in his mind, impact every facet of life. To summarize his thoughts rather crudely, once we get to Massachusetts, we're going to have so many problems that if we don't support each other and work for each other and try to uphold each other, we don't have a chance of succeeding if it's every man for himself. He said, we must love one another with a pure heart. We must bear one another's burdens. We must not look only on our own things, but also on the things of our brethren. Given the way that we utilize the word Puritan, you might imagine that Winthrop and his contemporaries took this all quite seriously. Winthrop's sermon set forth an ideal, and how this ideal was put into practice in the Bay Colony can be seen a few years later in the famous case of Robert Keene, the London merchant who settled in Boston in 1635 and who, in 1639, was charged by the elders at the First Church of Boston with dishonoring the name of God by selling his goods at an inflated profit. He was forced into paying a 200-pound fine and publicly admitting his sins, where he proclaimed that he, quote, had a covetous and corrupt heart. How much bacon was there in his sandwich? How outrageously did he rip off the people of the colony? He was accused of making a 6% profit on his goods, 2% more than the allowable limit, or what we would probably call reasonable or smart. Oh, here we go. It's almost a joke, right? A preacher who's going to talk about money and in so doing display a complete and utter lack of understanding about how things work in the world by quoting the Puritans as the anchor point for this sermon. I get that. I've been in a number of churches where the first and the last and most of the in-between seems to be about fundraising, and successfully raising said funds is also given as a sign of divine approval or blessing. That our culture and building bigger, better, new, shiny is enmeshed with church to such a degree that the city upon a hill had better shine very brightly and very newly with the very best fog machines and laser shows, or it is a true sign of divine disapproval, a lack of blessing. And we clergy are as guilty as anyone when we describe our churches. To one another, we often jump straight to the size. How many members do you have? We might even talk about the size of your budget, as if that were the most important thing to communicate to anybody else about who we belong to or what we are all about. Which is so strange. We intuitively know that the biggest companies might be the best, and we know they definitely might not be from a values perspective. We certainly don't regard the values of a family or how valuable a family is by how big it is. Winthrop's words are an important reminder of how, when he and the Bay Colony and the colonists came, their guiding principles were intended to be built upon a charitable disposition, knowing that the only way they could realize God's hope was if they worked and lived together in community. The city on a hill was to be regarded as such by its acts of charity rather than any other means of evaluating itself. It was an act, or an attempted act, of faithful imagination, preaching that particular sermon. Did they live out the principles each day once they got to Massachusetts? I am positive they did not. But that's the thing with acts of faithful imagination. They have one foot in the right here, right now, and they also have one foot in the divine promises. Walter Brueggemann once said that the Bible was not a package of certitudes, but it was itself an act of faithful imagination. Over these last few weeks, you may have heard by now that the prophet Isaiah was not in a position to see desert flowers clearly. They were not sprouting all around his ankles. He was a part of a people who had been rounded up and exported to another land. They had been defeated, subjugated, and worst of all, put into exile. It was the most desperate of times. It required an act of faithful imagination rather than a package of certitudes to claim the divine promises for Israel. Would Isaiah have been much of a prophet if he said, I'll bet we'll get out of here in 3 to 5? Instead, he talks about desert flowers, about crocuses. He talks about a highway that doesn't, in practical reality, exist. He talks about blooming in the driest places, painting a picture of beauty in the wilderness, a dry wilderness that sounds like Ezekiel's Valley of Bones, except there, too, Ezekiel talks about things coming back to life again. If you want an act of faithful imagination, if we in the Christian church want to hear of faithful imagination, we need only to recall what's around the corner for us liturgically. The Christmas story, new birth in the craziest of circumstances, new life when all seems lost. The story of prophetic and faithful imagination is one of faith, hope, and love, fixed in a disposition that is charitable. A way of being that is charitable, a lifestyle, a reason to be. As I was saying to the children earlier, the church doesn't have a stranglehold on either the gospel or hope. I can find it in lots of places if I try to look hard enough. There are plenty of amazing nonprofits doing lots of incredible work on lots of issues. I'll never be the kind of preacher that demands resources because we're the only place where you can find hope in the world. That is ridiculous. And also, hope is our reason to be. It is about being together and worshiping together and connecting our spiritual selves to the lives that we lead. We do church here so that we can take church there, wherever there may be. And what a thing it is that we can do these things almost as often as we want to. Eat together, sing together, pray together, wrestle with the big issues of the day together, make music together, visit each other, bless one another, study together, celebrate each other, learn how not to despair, to become anchored in guiding principles greater than our own, to get grounded, to find our center, to be still, to serve others. Hope. Hope today, hope in all times, hope from God, hope in happy times, hope in the driest of deserts. These are the gifts of God for the people of God. And thanks be to God for that. And so this morning we dedicated our pledges and our offerings and our hopes for our contributions. But we ought to also continue to dedicate one another in these acts of faithful imagination by living out hope, by being hope for one another. And so in place of a pastoral prayer this morning, I'd like to invite you to take a moment to pray for the people by your side, in front of you and behind you in the pews. You might know their names, you might not. If you don't know, you might ask. Let us pray that the person to your left and the person to your right, the person in front and the person behind, will have an experience of hope in their worship and in their prayers, in their waking and in their working. That hope will be their operating system as it is yours, their anchor point as it is yours, their desert flower, their blooming crocus, their hope. Let us offer prayers for one another in this moment. Holy God, we give you thanks for the vision of flowers that bloom in the desert. And the people say together, Amen.